Welcome to the sixth episode of Profs Radio, the show to A-star your business by learning from entrepreneurs' own experience how to solve problems. I'm your host, Peter Martin, Director of Profs.biz, the only digital company you need to run your business easier, quicker and cheaper. Today, we have Matt Wilson from Good Labs. Good morning, Matt. Do you want to say hi to the listeners and tell them about what you do?
Hey, morning, Peter. Thanks for having me on the podcast today. So Good Labs is a small consultancy that works in the niche of social impact. And so anybody who's trying to make a positive difference in the world, we exist to help them to evidence that, to help them to manage that impact, almost as a sort of business improvement process.
Sounds excellent. It's obviously very important that a lot of companies and organisations do think about that impact that they do have. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey to how you've got to where you are today?
Yeah, sure. I've been sort of 20 plus years in the charitable sector. And I think sometimes people think about the charity sector as kind of just a bunch of bumbling volunteers who sort of, do-gooders. And but actually, the charitable sector is a multi-billion-pound sector. Often people, when they think about the economy, think of it in terms of three sectors: the commercial sector, the public sector, and what often gets called the third sector or the voluntary sector, which is essentially all those charities that are out there. But actually, these are organisations that can be quite large, multi-million-pound budgets, lots of staff, and actually, rather than making products, are really service-based organisations, and the services that have been delivered are trying to address some of the most difficult social problems that we have in our society today. So the kind of charities I've been involved in have been working with children and young people, working in the education sector, working to tackle homelessness, and some work around the criminal justice sector as well. So quite varied over the years, tackling lots of challenging issues, working in partnership with local government, central government, and with some switched-on businesses as well, some sort of corporate sponsorship type work that I've been involved in over the years. And all that led me to the point a couple of years ago of actually realising that there's a whole load of people out there trying to do good. But the problem is, there are good ways to do good and not so good ways to do good. There are a lot of tricky issues out there. There's the law of unintended consequences. So sometimes we might think we're helping, and then we find out over the long term we're not. We're actually making something worse. Or we're just, relocating a problem into another space. And so I set up the consultancy, Good Labs, really. And the labs bit of it, it's because we do a lot of work around experimentation. We like to create environments where leadership teams can get away and think properly about the challenges that they're facing, or the challenges in the community around them that they're trying to tackle, and really ask that question: are we really making a difference? How can we make a difference better? What kind of metrics do we need to be looking at to show us whether or not we're making a difference? What are the things that will tell us where we can make an improvement, where we're performing well or where we're underperforming? So actually, it's just like sort of the kind of consultancy that you get in a commercial business, but trying to apply that kind of it's almost a kind of agile thinking that we're trying to apply to the way that a lot of these charity leadership teams think. And it's not just for charities as well. I do some work with some commercial firms as well, who particularly anyone who's trying to make a difference in community. So, whether you're a legal firm and you've got a lot of staff and you send them out on a volunteering day twice a year into the community or whatever, helping firms to think through the difference that they're trying to make is what I'm all about, really.
Sounds excellent. It sounds like you're doing quite amazing work, really. I'm glad you explained the labs bit, because I was a bit unsure about how that came about. Got the good bit, but not the labs bit. So
Yeah, well, yeah, no, it's nothing to do with dogs. So
yeah.
no, I'm not a Labrador breeder or anything like that.
I kind of imagined you wearing a white coat or something in goggles with the labs bit.
Well, no, funnily enough, I mean, there are, I'm not the only firm that offers labs, and literally, you can get. I went along the first time I experienced a lab myself was in Dallas, Texas, about. I mean, I could be getting over 10 years ago, probably less than that. I'd actually been invited as a guest speaker, and I turned up to this massive venue. It was an innovation conference. And all the staff were wearing these white lab coats. It was hilarious. But it was a tremendously innovative event, actually, and I took a lot away from that. I mean, the stuff that I'm doing now with Good Labs, I've put my own spin on it, but to what extent is anything original? We take from other places, don't we? We learn, we adapt. We say, okay, I like that, but it needs to be updated. So, I mean, the philosophy that I work with within Good Labs is a 3-step process. You can either go through in a day or you can go through in a year. But essentially, it's a process of it's a thought process that begins with insight. So you've got to really understand the nature of the problem that you're trying to solve. Then it moves into an innovation phase, and then it moves into an impact phase. The innovation phase is the fun bit, when we're trying to dream around how we can do things differently or come up with novel solutions. And the impact phase is when we're really trying to be critical, and we're saying, well, how the heck is this going to make a difference? And we're trying to really apply some critical thinking to the kind of good ideas that we think we've come up with. Obviously, when you're in that kind of consulting space, what you don't want to do is you don't want to start judging ideas too early. So you defer judgment and you save that for later in the process, or else it will smother the ideas that you're trying to incubate. Yeah, I mean, that all dates back to way back when I was in university, back in the mid-90s, and I did a foreign exchange over in New York State at one of the universities, and I was in a creativity unit. I went over there because there was a special unit for studying creativity, and they had this 3-step problem-solving process that they used in business and in industry. And it's kind of stuck with me ever since, really. I've adapted it a lot as I've gone along, but it's essentially the same core 3-step model that I learned from those American professors all those years ago.
Oh, interesting. And as we know, businesses always come across issues and obstacles, and I'm sure that's very true, particularly working in the charitable sector. Is there maybe an issue that you've come across in your business that you can share with the listeners today?
Well, I think Good Labs has, we've had a good start. I mean, it's a very small sort of boutique consultancy, really. I don't retain any full-time staff. I have some others who work with me on different challenges that we've got a bigger job and we're trying to solve something that requires some different expertise that I don't have personally. But problems that we face within the business. I think there's the constant juggle of, doing the work and winning the work. Having to set aside enough of my time to kind of keep the pipeline, fed with jobs. I think I manage that reasonably well now. It's more of my time than I thought it was going to have to be. I think probably every business owner understands that. You thought you might spend sort of 95% of your job fee earning and then, 5% marketing, and it's more like sort of 80-20. I probably have to spend, the equivalent of about a day a week being out there, getting to know people, pitching for work, and chasing proposals that I've sent to people a week ago, a fortnight ago, a month ago, 2 months ago. So there's all that kind of stuff. I think if there was a challenge that, if I had a member of staff, I think to have somebody on the sales end actually, would be where I would go, because I think there's so much work involved in just promoting the business and getting that pipeline of work really flowing.
It can be quite hard as well, can't it, with project works, because a project, even though you kind of give it an end date, never never fits that end date, does it really?
Well, yeah, that's right. I think I've just had to make sure, particularly when it comes to the agreements that I sign with clients at the beginning of a job, that we put a timeline on it. But obviously the cash flow challenge of if a job was supposed to take 3 months and ends up stretching 6, obviously we can't afford to not get paid until the end of the job. So I've started to put interim payments. If there's from no fault of our own, if the client moves slowly, then they need to recognise that as small businesses, our cash flow is important, and so started to build in a few clauses to the contract.
That affects that whole pipeline that you were talking about as well, doesn't it? It's the projects that you thought.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Before we find out how you resolve that issue in your business, I'd just like to take a minute to let you know of our community, Entrepreneur Profs, where you can meet other entrepreneurs and learn from them, as well as find the tools that we recommend. Just go to entrepreneurs.profs.biz. You can also join our free Entrepreneur Profs Facebook group. So you've discussed there, Matt, a little bit about obviously being in business. We have to spend a lot of time finding more work, kind of chasing proposals. And when you're selling your time, that can be quite difficult to find that time as well to do that, because obviously you're spending that time billing clients as well. How have you resolved that issue in your business? And is there any kind of software or tools that have helped you?
Sure. Being organised. I consider myself a pretty well-organised person anyway. But one thing that I started to do when I launched Good Labs, I looked around at various sort of project management type software, that kind of thing, lots of different apps, tested out a few, and I settled on a bit of software. It's free to use. I use the free version of it, but you can upgrade, particularly if you've got a larger team. I don't know if you come across it. It's called Toggl, Toggl.
No,
absolutely fantastic. So my entire life is now recorded on Toggl, which is slightly worrying for me. If somebody ever got hold of the data, if I ever got hacked. No, but what I mean by that is, I have to, because I might have 6 or 7 clients on the go at any one time, and I'm dipping in and out of different projects. So I've got the whole thing on screen. I know every minute of the day which job I'm working on, because, whilst I do get out and about a lot, I spend time within other people's businesses, or perhaps off-site, a different location that we're all gathering in. A lot of my work happens from here, from this home office that I'm sat in today as I'm talking to you. And so when it comes to sort of, the end of the month, and I'm starting to bill, to be able to look back at that report that Toggl gives me, how many hours I've spent on each different client, or even to be able to look back towards the end of the month and say, am I spending too much time on any particular job or not enough time on another job? It helps me to make adjustments. So I couldn't do without that, actually. And I think, so time management, because I've not got a PA anymore. When I've been leading in the past, leading large organisations, I've had a team around me, people who can say, Matt, you're supposed to be here or there, and obviously that's not the case anymore. So, Toggl's become, it's not a virtual assistant, but it's a very, very helpful tool for being organised.
That's a really good example of how software can actually improve productivity and improve time, particularly when you have had that, been quite used to somebody doing that for you. I bet that was a bit of a change.
You've got to get over the hump, though.
Into software.
Yeah. My wife also runs her own business and works with a lot of different clients. And I've been trying to introduce her to Toggl recently. And I think there's always the challenge of adopting a new piece of software, because you've got to be ruthless with it. It only works if you use it all the time. It wouldn't work if you only used it sort of half of your time. It would be utterly pointless. And so I went over that hump of adoption, the challenge of the first few weeks, the first month of thinking, this is a pain, having to start this app on my phone. But But now it's so invaluable, and I'm just in the habit of doing it, so it works for me.
Oh, that's good that you've managed to integrate it there. And is there a top tip that you have for organisations who maybe want to improve their social impact?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. The one thing I tend to say for organisations is they've got to be clear on the change that they want to affect. So you can look at annual reports from charities and from businesses. And in fact, there's a trend at the moment, particularly in the charity sector, but it's creeping into the business world as well, that the annual report is starting to become described as an annual impact report. I don't know if you've spotted that. But there's a big difference between outputs and impacts. And so you'll often see lots of fancy infographics in there saying this is how much we've done this year. You know, we've served 15,000 breakfasts to school children, or, you know, we've volunteered, 20,000 hours of our staff time to the community or whatever. And that doesn't say, so what? And did that make any kind of difference at all? Impact is describing the change that you've seen. So if you're going to, if you want to, if you're a business that wants to make a difference in your community, you've got to really think long and hard about what is the difference I want to make. Which is beyond just saying, oh, I think I've got X number of hours a week or X number of hours a month that I could donate, or I've got these staff over here who've got these skills that might be useful. But so what? So what are we going to change? I mean, I was with the leader of our local council not too long ago, and we were having a discussion about the local authority procurement route. And I don't know if you know, but there was some changes in law not too long ago that made it possible for local authorities to start to apply different weightings to their contractual arrangements, all in an effort to help local suppliers to be able to play a bigger part in local government supply chains, which are multi-million-pound supply chains. And as we all know, it's often the very large national and international companies that get those contracts to the detriment of the local suppliers. And the way they do that is through a clause they call the social value clause. And I was asking, so how are we in our area here in North Tyneside? What are we doing about that? And initially, there'd been a very complicated set of social value arrangements. But everybody actually knows that there are just, whilst we've got very, very good schools in this borough, there are a few areas where the schools have just struggled for a long, long time and have continued to. And so actually, what social value really means, what making a difference really means in a place like this is, go do something that's going to improve the educational prospects for those kids in that high school over there, because that's where the help is really needed. Don't spread yourself around thinly. Go and provide some apprenticeships for those teenagers over there, or, go and show those kids what it really means to, go and do some mock interviews with them, or whatever. So, because what's going to change is, you're really clear. So if what you want to change is, I want to change young people's mindsets about the possibility of getting a good job when they hit 16 or 18 or whatever, then go do that. But just be really, really clear. What is the change we want to see?
It's very important that, because we can always donate time, donate money, but actually, if it's not having an impact, we're just wasting both.
Yeah.
So to measure kind of what are you doing, because if you're going to do something, particularly as a business where obviously like staff go on volunteer days or donating money, that is an expense, and people want to do good, and you do want to measure that as a business to see what you are doing with that. And lastly, I mean, we've touched on your project management tool, but do you have a favorite piece of software or tool that you most recommend?
Well, I mean, we might have jumped the gun on that question, because I do really love Toggle. But I also, for my accounts, I use the Sage Business Cloud. I really like that, actually. I find that really, really easy to use. It integrates with my bank account. So, and the Northeast business. Shout out to Sage as well. I can't say anything about the other versions of Sage, but that particular one, it used to be called Sage 1. I think they've changed the name of it now to Sage Business Cloud. I really like that. Me as a non-accountant running a small business, perfectly straightforward for me to do my own accounts on that. What else do I use? I like Squarespace for my website. Okay. They put their prices up recently, which I don't like. But actually, again, makes it really easy for me as I'm not a web designer, but I think if you look at the Good Labs website, hopefully you'll see that it's as professional as anything you'll see out there on the web.
Looks
And
good.
so that's all. That's not down to me. That's down to Squarespace. And so they're perhaps my top three. Then Squarespace, Sage One, and Toggle.
Thank you very much for that. And before you go, how can people connect with you?
Okay. Goodlabs.uk is our website. Obviously, it's got a contact form on there, which you'd expect. They can get in touch with me directly with matt@goodlabs.uk. And they're probably the two main ways to get in touch.
Are you on social media or anything?
I am. I'm not as busy on social media as I should be. Yes, people are very, very welcome to follow Good Labs on social media. Probably could do with one or two more followers, to be honest. You're going to now ask me what the handle is, aren't you? I think it's goodlabs_UK at goodlabs_UK. I think.
Okay.
It's got no underscore. So no, just Good Labs UK.
Okay. There we go. Thank you very much for that.
All right, Peter.
Thank you for coming on the podcast as well. Really appreciate your time and hearing about.
My pleasure.
That you've got. Remember to check out our community and Facebook group. Go and A-star your business today.